The Strait of Hormuz is exploding right now. Multiple commercial ships attacked, fires burning on tankers, GPS jamming affecting over 1,000 vessels, shipping companies rerouting away from the region, and 20% of the world's oil and gas supply flows through this narrow waterway. This all erupted on Sunday, March 1st, after U.S.-Israeli strikes against Iran as part of Operation Epic Fury triggered immediate Iranian retaliation targeting commercial shipping. Within hours, 3 separate vessels were hit by projectiles. One explosion near Sharjah in the UAE. One tanker hit above the waterline north of Muscat, Oman, causing a fire that was eventually controlled. A third ship northwest of Mina Saqr in the UAE also hit by a projectile causing onboard fire. These aren't accidents. These are deliberate attacks on commercial shipping in retaliation for American and Israeli strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities and Revolutionary Guard installations. Jacob P. Larson, head of maritime security at BIMCO, told Fox News, "The Persian Gulf, the Strait of Hormuz, and adjacent waters are currently the most dangerous place for commercial shipping. Ships in the Persian Gulf are threatened by Iranian attacks." The UK maritime trade operations and regional authorities are calling these incidents attacks. Not accidents, not mishaps, attacks. Iran is deliberately targeting commercial vessels in one of the most critical waterways on Earth. But it gets worse. On top of physical attacks, there's massive electronic warfare happening. Windward Maritime Intelligence reports widespread GPS and AIS jamming affecting over 1,000 ships. Vessels are showing up falsely at airports, nuclear power plants, and inland areas because their navigation systems are being electronically attacked. Major shipping company Maersk announced they're diverting services away from the region, citing crew and cargo safety. Tankers are turning around. Some are disabling their AIS signals to avoid being tracked and targeted. Traffic through the strait is already declining dramatically. When you understand what's actually happening in the Strait of Hormuz, why Iran is attacking commercial shipping, and what this means for global oil supplies and the world economy, you'll realize we're potentially facing an energy crisis that could trigger worldwide recession. Let me walk you through what's happening, why it's happening now, and what comes next. The Strait of Hormuz is a narrow waterway between Iran and Oman, connecting the Persian Gulf to the Gulf of Oman and the Arabian Sea. It's only 21 miles wide at its narrowest point, and approximately 20% of the world's oil and gas exports flow through it. 20%, that's roughly 21 million barrels of oil per day. That's oil from Saudi Arabia, UAE, Kuwait, Iraq, Iran, all the major Persian Gulf producers shipping to markets in Asia, Europe, and beyond. If the Strait of Hormuz closes or becomes too dangerous for commercial shipping, 1/5 of global oil supply is immediately cut off. Prices spike. Energy importing countries face shortages. The global economy takes an immediate massive hit. Iran has threatened for decades to close the strait if attacked. It's their ultimate leverage. They can't match American military power, but they can disrupt global oil supplies and inflict economic pain on the entire world. And now, under the pressure of Operation Epic Fury, Iran is making good on those threats. They're attacking commercial shipping. They're jamming navigation systems. They're making the strait too dangerous for normal operations. U.S. maritime authorities issued a warning on February 28th, urging commercial vessels to avoid the Persian Gulf, Gulf of Oman, and Arabian Sea if possible due to heightened security risks. That warning came just before the explosion of attacks we're seeing now. It is advised that vessels stay away from this area if possible, the notice stated. That's not routine advice. That's telling commercial shipping, this area is a war zone. Stay out if you can, but many vessels can't stay out. Oil tankers loading from Persian Gulf ports have to transit the strait. There's no alternative route. If you're shipping oil from Saudi Arabia or UAE to Asia, you go through Hormuz. Period. So ships are caught in an impossible situation. They need to transit the strait for commercial reasons. But doing so means risking attack from Iranian forces. Let's talk about the specific incidents reported on Sunday, because the details reveal Iranian tactics. First incident, a vessel west of Sharjah, UAE was shaken by an unknown projectile that exploded nearby. This suggests either a missile that missed its target or a drone that detonated close to the ship. The explosion was close enough to damage or shake the vessel, but didn't score a direct hit. Second incident, a tanker north of Muscat, Oman was hit above the waterline, triggering a fire. This was a direct hit. Whatever weapon Iran used, missile, drone, or possibly a mine, actually struck the vessel, causing damage and fire. The crew was able to control the fire, suggesting the hit wasn't catastrophic, but still significant. Third incident, A ship northwest of Mina Saqr, UAE, was also hit by a projectile causing onboard fire. Another direct hit, another vessel damaged and burning. 3 attacks. 3 different locations spread across the region. This wasn't one isolated incident. This was coordinated targeting of commercial shipping across a wide area. Iran is sending a message. Anywhere in the Persian Gulf and Gulf of Oman, we can hit you. You're not safe close to Iran. You're not safe near UAE or Oman. The entire region is a threat zone. The weapons being used appear to be a mix of drones and missiles. Iran has extensive drone capabilities, including kamikaze drones that can be programmed to hit ships. They also have anti-ship missiles, including Chinese-designed systems. The fact that some hits were above the waterline suggests precision targeting. Iran isn't just firing randomly hoping to hit something, they're selecting targets and aiming for specific strike points. Now let's talk about the electronic warfare, because this is equally dangerous, even though it's not as dramatic as explosions and fires. Windward Maritime Intelligence reports over 1,000 vessels are experiencing GPS and AIS jamming. That's an enormous number. That's essentially every ship operating in the region facing navigation system disruption. GPS jamming means ships can't accurately determine their position. In crowded waters with narrow channels and specific navigation routes, that's extremely dangerous. Ships could collide. They could run aground. They could drift into Iranian territorial waters and be seized. AIS jamming is equally problematic. The automatic identification system broadcasts a ship's position, course, and speed to other vessels and shore stations. It's how ships avoid collisions and how authorities track maritime traffic. When AIS is jammed, ships become invisible to tracking systems. Windward reports ships appearing falsely at airports, nuclear power plants, and inland areas. That's sophisticated electronic warfare creating false position data. Why would Iran do this? Several reasons. It makes navigation dangerous, forcing ships to slow down or avoid the area entirely. It allows Iranian forces to operate without being tracked. It creates confusion and uncertainty that disrupts commercial operations. And it demonstrates Iranian capability. This is advanced electronic warfare requiring sophisticated equipment and technical expertise. Iran is showing they can dominate the electromagnetic spectrum in the region if they choose to. Maritime security expert Larson explained that GPS interference has significantly increased following the start of hostilities. This isn't background noise or accidental interference. This is deliberate, systematic jamming that began specifically when Operation Epic Fury started. Ships are trying to protect themselves by staying as far from Iran as possible. But in the narrow confines of the Persian Gulf, there's only so much distance you can maintain. You're always within range of Iranian weapons and jamming systems. Larson said most ships are trying to leave the Persian Gulf to escape the threat. That's ships fleeing the region entirely, not just avoiding certain routes, actually leaving the Persian Gulf because it's too dangerous to operate there. And that's exactly what Iran wants. If commercial shipping abandons the Persian Gulf, oil exports stop, prices spike, the global economy suffers. Iran inflicts pain on America and its allies without having to directly confront U.S. military forces. Now let's talk about what shipping companies are doing because their response shows how serious this is. Maersk, one of the world's largest shipping companies, announced they're diverting services away from the region, citing crew and cargo safety concerns. This is a major commercial decision with enormous economic implications. When Maersk diverts routes, it means longer transit times, higher fuel costs, delayed deliveries, and supply chain disruptions. But they've determined those costs are acceptable compared to the risk of having ships attacked in the Strait of Hormuz. Other shipping companies are making similar calculations. Some tankers have turned around entirely rather than transit the strait. Some are disabling their AIS transponders so they can't be tracked and targeted. Some are waiting in safe areas, hoping the situation calms down. Traffic through the strait has already declined noticeably. Exactly how much is hard to quantify in real time, but maritime analysts report significant reduction in vessel movements. This has immediate effects on oil markets. If tankers can't or won't transit Hormuz, Persian Gulf oil can't reach markets. Supply decreases, prices increase. Oil prices have already spiked on news of attacks in the strait. Analysts warn prices could go much higher if the situation escalates or if Iran attempts a full closure of the strait. Kevin Book from Clearview Energy Partners analyzed the potential impacts of U.S. strikes on Iran on global oil prices. The attacks on shipping in the strait are exactly the Iranian response that drives oil price increases. 20% of global oil supply flows through a 21-mile-wide chokepoint. If that chokepoint becomes impassable, the entire global energy market is immediately disrupted. Now let's talk about Houthi threats, because they're adding another layer of danger. The Houthis in Yemen, who are backed by Iran, have threatened to resume attacks on shipping in the Red Sea, the Strait of Bab el-Mandeb, and the Gulf of Aden. These are the waterways on the other side of the Arabian Peninsula. If Houthis attack shipping in the Red Sea while Iran attacks in the Strait of Hormuz, commercial vessels face threats from both directions. Ships trying to avoid Hormuz by going around Africa would face Houthi attacks in the Red Sea. There's essentially no safe route. Persian Gulf to Asia via Hormuz is dangerous because of Iran. Persian Gulf to Europe via Suez requires transiting the Red Sea, which is dangerous because of Houthis. The Tanker Owners Association Intertanko warned members that Houthis are expected to react and resume their attacks on shipping, even though immediate intelligence remained unclear. So shipping companies are trying to calculate risk across multiple threat zones. Do we risk Hormuz attacks from Iran? Do we risk Red Sea attacks from Houthis? Do we take the long route around Africa, adding weeks to delivery time and massive fuel costs? None of the options are good. Every choice involves either direct danger or severe economic costs. Larson noted that vessels with commercial ties to American or Israeli interests are considered more likely targets, though others could be hit deliberately or by mistake. That by mistake qualifier is important. In the chaos of attacks and electronic warfare, Iranian forces might hit the wrong ship. They might target a vessel thinking it's connected to U.S. or Israeli interests, when it's actually neutral or connected to friendly countries. So even ships that think they're not targets could be hit accidentally. That risk alone is enough to make companies avoid the region entirely. Now let's talk about what Iran could do next, because we haven't seen their full capability yet. Larson said, "There is no sign of Iranian attempts to close the strait with sea or naval mines, though that may change in the short term." Naval mines. That's Iran's ultimate weapon for closing the strait. They could mine the narrow shipping channels, making transit impossible until the mines are cleared. Mine clearing is slow, dangerous work requiring specialized vessels and equipment. Even if the U.S. and allies began clearing operations immediately, it could take weeks to make the strait safe again. During those weeks, essentially no oil flows through Hormuz. Global oil supply drops by 20% immediately. Prices spike to levels not seen since the 1970s oil crises. Energy-dependent economies face immediate crisis. The fact that Iran hasn't deployed mines yet suggests they're holding that option in reserve. If Operation Epic Fury continues or escalates, mining the strait becomes Iran's escalation response. Iran could also seize vessels. They've done it before. Commandeer a ship, sail it to an Iranian port, hold the crew hostage, demand concessions for their release. A seized oil tanker becomes a political crisis and an economic one. The cargo is held hostage. The crew becomes hostages. Insurance rates spike. Other vessels refuse to transit the area. Iran could also increase the tempo of attacks. 3 vessels hit on Sunday, but Iran has the capability to hit many more. They could launch dozens of drones and missiles targeting every vessel in range. A concentrated attack like that would be devastating. Multiple ships damaged or sunk. Potential loss of life. Immediate halt to all commercial traffic. Total closure of the strait without even using mines. The question is whether Iran wants to escalate that far, because closing the strait completely guarantees massive U.S. military response. American forces would have to reopen the strait by force. That means direct confrontation with Iranian naval forces and potentially invasion of Iranian coastal areas to eliminate missile and drone launch sites. Iran knows this, so they're calibrating their attacks to inflict pain without triggering overwhelming American military response. But as Operation Epic Fury continues bombing Iranian nuclear facilities and military sites, Iran faces pressure to escalate. Their leadership might conclude that limited attacks aren't deterring America, so more dramatic action is necessary. That's how this spirals into full-scale war. Gradual escalation from both sides until someone crosses a line that triggers maximum response. Now let's talk about the economic implications, because this goes far beyond just oil prices. 20% of global oil supply potentially disrupted. That alone would spike prices and trigger inflation worldwide. Every product that requires transportation becomes more expensive. Everything manufactured using petroleum products becomes more expensive. Entire industries dependent on affordable energy face crisis. But it's not just oil. Natural gas also transits the strait. Countries dependent on Persian Gulf gas face energy shortages. Power generation could be affected. Industrial processes requiring natural gas could shut down. Supply chains already stressed by previous disruptions face another major shock. Goods that normally ship through the Persian Gulf have to find alternative routes, adding cost and time. Insurance rates for vessels operating in the region spike dramatically. Those costs get passed on to consumers through higher prices for everything shipped by sea. Stock markets react to energy price spikes and supply chain disruptions. Global economic growth slows. Countries heavily dependent on energy imports face recession. This isn't hypothetical. This is what happens when the Strait of Hormuz becomes a war zone. It's happened before in smaller ways. During the Iran-Iraq War in the 1980s, both countries attacked shipping in the Persian Gulf in what became known as the Tanker War. Global powers had to step in to protect commercial shipping. The U.S. Navy escorted tankers through the Gulf. Naval confrontations occurred between U.S. and Iranian forces. We could be heading toward a similar situation now. If commercial shipping can't safely transit Hormuz without military escort, the U.S. and allies will have to provide that escort. That means direct confrontation with Iranian forces threatening shipping. That's how you get from isolated attacks on commercial vessels to full naval warfare. Here's the bottom line and why this matters. The Strait of Hormuz is exploding. 3 commercial vessels attacked on Sunday. GPS and AIS jamming affecting over 1,000 ships. Major shipping companies diverting services away from the region. 20% of global oil and gas flows through this 21-mile-wide chokepoint. Traffic is already declining as ships flee the danger zone. This is Iran's retaliation for Operation Epic Fury. They can't stop American bombing of their nuclear facilities, but they can disrupt global oil supplies and inflict economic pain on the world. Maritime experts say the Persian Gulf is currently the most dangerous place for commercial shipping. Ships are trying to leave the region entirely to escape the threat. Houthis threaten to resume Red Sea attacks, creating danger from both directions. No safe shipping route exists. Iran hasn't deployed naval mines yet, but could do so at any time. That would close the strait completely until mines are cleared. Oil prices are spiking. Supply chain disruptions are beginning. Global economic impacts are starting. If this escalates, we face potential energy crisis triggering worldwide recession. Every previous major oil price spike has caused economic crisis. This could be worse because it's combined with existing inflation and supply chain stress. The U.S. military will have to respond to protect commercial shipping. That means potential direct confrontation with Iranian naval forces. That's how this becomes full-scale war. 3 ships attacked. Over 1,000 experiencing navigation jamming. Major shipping companies fleeing the region. 20% of global oil supply at risk. The Strait of Hormuz is burning, and the world economy could burn with it.